Unitarian Universalists love to talk about the beloved community. But what is the beloved community? Sometimes I ask this question and I can see that there is the kind of searching expression on people's faces that says to me, we haven't quite arrived at a common understanding. Many people say it's an ideal, right? Something that we're working towards, a vision. And underneath those words, there's the suggestion. There's the premise that it is something to live by, but we will be forgiven if we don't fully achieve it, right? So in response to the question, it's a vision, right? It's an ideal. Yes, it is a vision. It is an ideal, but it is an ideal and a vision that's meant to be realized here on earth. In fact, I know the earth as the home to the beloved community, which is one reason why we have to care for our planet. This idea of a realized ideal community in the Christian tradition goes all the way back to koinonia. Koinonia translates from ancient Greek into fellowship, community, sharing. Koinonia is the ancient Greek term for beloved community. It reflects, when you study its intention, it's meant to be the community in which there is deep emotional and spiritual bonds, the kind of intimacy and connection that we imagine and know occurs between spouses, between us mortal human creatures and the source of all existence, that some call simply holy or divine, and some call God. And it is this type of deep spiritual and emotional connection that in koinonia, or in the beloved community, actually exists between many people. It is how members of that community know each other, with that kind of connection and love. Today, I wanted to introduce with Reverend John, a couple of understandings of beloved community that we invite you to try on. The first understanding is that beloved community is an experience that we move into and out of. In short, it is an experience that we can, and sometimes even do, experience in our lives today. Martin Luther King Jr. actually speaks of this sort of moving in and out of beloved community. He's one of the people who used the term, in fact, popularized it in American culture. And I have to say, he only once ever really defined it and didn't describe it much, or didn't focus on teaching a solid understanding of it. And I think of developing that solid understanding of it as part of our inherited work. But Martin Luther King Jr. did also step into and out of beloved community. We knew and know when he experienced brutality, violence, when he was alone in the Birmingham jail, that those were not moments of beloved community. But there was a moment after the March on Selma in 1966, 55 years ago. And it was actually after it, when he was at the airport, he describes an experience in his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? And he writes, as he looked at a diverse group of people, as I stood with them, and saw white and Negro, nuns and priests, ministers and rabbis, labor organizers, lawyers, doctors, housemaids, and shop workers, brimming with vitality and enjoying a rare comradeship. I knew I was seeing a microcosm of the humanity of the future in this moment of luminous and genuine brotherhood. See, in that moment in the airport, looking into those faces and observing their activities, he felt the deep emotional and spiritual bond of beloved community. Beloved community is an experience that we move in and out of, but we also want to understand it and introduce it to you today as a practice. That there are practices that foster and help sustain, help us enter into and stay in beloved community. And so today we want to talk about those practices. The practices that we're going to focus on today are the practices of moving at the speed of trust, of building resiliency into the system, of decentralizing leadership, and of acknowledging that what we give attention to will grow. I invite us into these practices so that way we can pay attention to how we set the patterns that allow beloved community to occur. And we recognize the markers of beloved community when we're in such an experience. Reverend John, I also have noticed how much our values lead us into certain places, certain justice-making places in the world. I actually saw this in seminary during my first year. I was really intrigued with various campus groups. And so I would just show up to learn more, to see if I would belong there, to participate in the creation of something good and worthy. And I noticed something in particular. UUs at the time made up about 2 or 3% of the student body campus, and no percentage of the faculty at Union Theological Seminary. And it was intriguing to me, therefore, when I would show up at worship and there'd be a number of UUs, and we would make up about 15 to 25% of people who are attending worship. We were a good 15 to 20% of the gospel choir. We were about 40 to 60% of people who were initiating anti-racist conversations and learning opportunities for those on the campus. And we would be about, 75% of the people showing up for reproductive or sexual justice. And when I began to notice this, I recognized that there's something at the heart of Unitarian Universalism, our principles and our theology, our culture and our practices, our understandings of ourselves and our work in the world that guided us to those places. In fact, seeing all these UUs independently come to a decision to place themselves in those rooms helped me understand how I was part of a greater set of people and values. I want to suggest to you that these practices that we've suggested to you today, moving at the speed of trust, building resiliency, decentralizing leadership, giving attention to that which you want to see grow, are fundamentals. They're fundamentals that, if we get right, can grow to greater impact like any fractal pattern can. Let me give you an example of this. In 1942, Clarence and Florence Jordan and Martin and Mabel England moved to Sumter County, Georgia. They were doing this because they were intentionally forming a community based on koinonia, that concept, that Christian concept that undergirds beloved community. And they really emphasized how to be with one another there. But over the years, it didn't stop there. They founded the Fuller Center for Housing, the Prison and Jail Project, and just a minor thing called Habitat for Humanity International. So my dear ones, when you are in doubt, practice some of the fundamental skills of beloved community and pay attention for the markers that you're in a loving, knowing, forgiving, harm stopping, harm repairing place of love. And when you are in doubt, give life to that beloved community by following the desires of your heart. You don't always have to know that that practice will lead to something bigger. When Patrisse Cullors hashtagged Black Lives Matter in 2013, she didn't think that she was starting a movement. She was merely expressing the deep yearning and truth in her heart. That hashtag has been repeated over 41 million times on Twitter alone. So on this day and on the days going forward, may you give life to beloved community. May you practice the fundamentals of beloved community. May you grow those practices like a fractal pattern, adding strength to one another. And may you cherish the experiences of beloved community that you move into. May we do this beloved community work together. Amen. And may it be so.